Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we are here for another Insider podcast. And it is my pleasure to have Niccolo de Masi, dMY Technology CEO, and we are here to talk about quantum and IonQ. Niccolo, how are you doing? We are live. It's Friday afternoon.
No, good to be here, my friend. It's been an exciting day, week, month, and year for dMY, and it's been equally exciting for the quantum computing world as we gear up here for the world's first IPO next week of the world's first quantum computing company, IonQ.
Super exciting. So a lot of people know you in the industry, but we have a pretty wide following, and I'm sure there's a few people out there that aren't familiar with Niccolo. Can you talk a little bit about your company, what you do, things like that? A little introduction.
Yeah, so dMY Technology is a SPAC franchise. We've been going for a few years. We have done 4 in total. IonQ was our third. Our first 2 were actually in the gambling and sort of sports betting data businesses. But I'm proud to say that we're actually the world's best performing SPAC sponsor right now, if you think about post-close performance. So IonQ is on its way to closing on Tuesday, the 28th, not that far from now. It will change tickers, I think, on the 30th. And we're slated to ring the bell on October 1st. But yeah, no, this is a great slide. We're very proud of this, Pat. As you know, we've been working very, very hard the last few years to drive fundamental outperformance as kind of our calling card and trademark. And so all dMY transactions from the first to the third to hopefully the fourth, fifth, and many more to come, price conservatively. And we work with high quality assets that forecast conservatively and are able to really demonstrate not just meeting numbers, but beating numbers, or in the case of IonQ, outright crushing and obliterating numbers. I think actually, while we're here, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk a bit more about fundamental outperformance, as it's something that we're very proud of here. But
sure.
IonQ has upgraded their bookings guidance for this year by 200%, which is definitely a career record for me. I've never been on the board of any company that has tripled bookings guidance halfway through the year or 9 months into the year for the present year revenue. IonQ did this, believe it or not, just between March when we announced the deal and kind of mid-September, which is a week ago or so. And it's a really impressive performance because it means the company is delivering 2022 numbers
right
in 2021. And I really haven't seen that too often. I got to be honest. If anyone was wondering whether or not the era of quantum computing has arrived, I sort of feel like that one metric, rings that bell rather hard globally.
Yeah. So there's 2 things going on. So first of all, Niccolo, you've really brought respect to SPACs. I mean, you look at real returns. This is not some, sports personality that decides to do a blank check with nothing behind it. Those are real returns, and it was fun to watch you go. And I don't know where you started, but I saw you at number 2, and then you went to number 1, and it's pretty exciting. And what I also find interesting is that you're into returns, yet we're talking about quantum here with IonQ, and I've heard some people say that, gosh, quantum is uninvestable because there's no revenue. And you just told me that IonQ had a 200% increase. So why quantum? You have so many things that you can be investing in.
Yeah. So we're focused on, really chunky / interesting long-term returns. Our shareholder base are all fundamental investors that are looking at where we're going to be, kind of I call it the Warren Buffett test. Close your eyes, come back 3, 5, 7 years later. Is the company much bigger? Is the share price much higher? Our first 2 SPAC deals have nearly doubled, and they're inside their first year post-close. IonQ, I think, is going to rocket out of the gates when it closes because it's already performing well even before the vote. And there is no doubt in my mind that the 21st century is going to see not just $5-10 billion market cap quantum computing companies, but I think there's going to be an ARM-sized business, and there's going to be ultimately an Nvidia. Now, we think IonQ is going to be the Nvidia. I sort of feel like an investment in IonQ today, it's about the same market cap as Nvidia was when they IPO'd in 2001. There will, of course, be challenges to overcome and scaling to do, and ultimately a Fortune 1000 to sell to and beyond. But there's a very high probability that quantum computing is going to be an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap, because it's going to power the future of the cloud. I mean, IonQ wouldn't have Amazon as a shareholder and Google as a shareholder, and Amazon, Google, and Microsoft all as cloud partners if they weren't important to the future of the $1 trillion of market cap each of these companies have for the cloud, right? So it's a falsehood that there's no revenue. We said 7 figures, now we're saying 8 figures. We know that IBM has meaningful revenues.
Yeah.
Probably even higher than ours, depending on how you count, traditional computing and sort of hybrid quantum deals. There's a couple other companies out there that have revenue also in the software space. So it's early, but 5 years ago was when there was no revenue, not 2021.
Yeah, and one thing I really like too is sometimes when things are so different, that's not a good thing. Quantum is very different from classical computing, but one thing that I like about it, where I was in the industry, I was at AMD and was watching Nvidia, rake in all of this with their CUDA programming language and GPUs, is that quantum used as an accelerator at first, right? We're not talking about booting a quantum computer on Linux, but using it first as an accelerator, which is exactly the same reference that the industry has for other accelerators, like a GPU, like a custom ASIC, like even an FPGA that let's say is powering the edge. So that's one element that I really like about it. Now, let's dive into some of the big announcements. I mean, the PR folks at IonQ must be really busy, because I'm pretty sure there were 2 press releases a week for the last month, which is great because almost nobody in quantum talks about what is actually happening. They're a little careful with their words and what's actually happening. So one thing I really appreciated was how informative some of these announcements were. And I think it started off with the University of Maryland National Quantum Lab. And from what I understand, University of Maryland is, I'm going to call it the epicenter of quantum here in the US, but it's one of the most nationally recognized quantum labs in the world.
Yeah, no, all well said, Pat. I mean, the reason why UMD is kind of on the map is actually because of IonQ's founders, right? So Dr. Chris Monroe has been there since the mid-90s. I can remember studying him when I was a physicist, in graduate school. He's kind of the 800-pound gorilla vis-a-vis taking Dr. Feynman's theoretical postulations and turning them into something that's an empirical reality, right? So IonQ's, we believe, toweringly ahead of everybody else in quantum hardware, because they've been thinking about it longer than anybody else, for decades. They're not 5 years into this, they're 25 years into this. And also because they've chosen the most practical, let's call it paradigm, to make this work. IonTrap's most practical paradigm for making quantum hardware useful in 2021, 2022, even more useful in 2025, 2028. But when you say people choose their words carefully in quantum, all of our competitors tend to talk about how amazing their system will be in 2030 or 2028 or 2035. And we just don't believe that's the way technology markets advance. I mean, to sort of play back what you rightly said about GPUs and so on, like, absolutely, GPUs today, turns out they can power all AI, machine learning, et cetera. But at one point it was sort of an add-on. I think quantum is exactly on that trajectory. So right now it's going to be certain pieces of machine learning, artificial intelligence, certain problems where even a 2030 algorithmic qubit system can be additive. Financial services, algorithms for options pricing, portfolio management. This requires 30 to 40 algorithmic qubits. IonQ already is getting paid effectively for things like handwriting recognition algorithms that are better than classical because of the way they recast the problem, even an 11 qubit system. But our read of the way tech markets develop, and I'd love your opinion too, is like if you have a 5 to 7 to maybe 10-year lead over other technologies, you're going to get all the customers, right? And so I really haven't seen an industry where you sort of sit in your hands and work in the corner and then you sort of come out and go like, look at this, it's great. Because what tends to happen is those businesses get, frankly, acqui-hired or acquired, if they're lucky, by businesses like IonQ that get public first, that get the capital, get the scale, that have, we believe, the winning technology from 11 qubits to 11,000 qubits to probably 111,000 qubits. There's only really a debate when you're kind of at 500,000 qubits, a million algorithmic qubits or above. And I got to remind everyone, as you know, Patrick, like we don't have an algorithm right now that needs more than 5,000 algorithmic qubits, right? That's what, Shor's algorithm is to crack all RSA, the fundamental backbone of the internet, Bitcoin. All of it goes away with 5,000 algorithmic qubits because it's processing 2 to the power of 5,000 things per clock tick, right? So it seemed kind of silly to me for anyone to say that if we win all the way up to 50,000 qubits, we're going to need quantum computers to figure out what you do with more than 5,000 qubits. And that'll be us too, right? So this is
and here is what got the Nvidia flywheel going. And by the way, I was there. I was trying to figure out what to do more with GPUs when I was at AMD. And what Nvidia did that AMD didn't is Nvidia had invested in universities and basically set up, probably in a very similar way at University of Maryland. And this was at University of Toronto, where they figured out how image classification could be done 10 to 100x better on a GPU. And essentially what happens then, all the money comes in once you can find a solution to a problem with a 10 or 100x, and it feeds that company to get to that next level of investment. And I don't know, maybe 5% of everybody remains. 95% get either bought or they just go out of business, and the piece part. So to your direct question on how I see markets ending up, that's exactly what I think is going to happen in machine learning accelerators. I think it's exactly what's going to happen in quantum computing. I mean, we still have 25 machine learning accelerator companies, maybe 50. They're growing like kudzu, given all the money that's in venture capital. But what I found interesting too is that let's move on. You talked about all the uses for quantum that you're seeing. Fidelity and Goldman actually came out and gave very definitive statements. And my biggest thing was they went out on a limb and said that they actually ran algorithms on IonQ's quantum computer that showed improvements in a myriad of financial analysis algorithms, important ones. And these weren't, hey, theoretically, we think we could run these better. They actually ran it. And one of these partners actually went out on a limb and I think even said, we chose IonQ because it was the highest performance platform out there.
No, that all well said. I mean, look, to sort of wrap up what you were saying about university centers, yes, I mean, UMD is on the map because of IonQ and Chris Monroe, but this partnership ensures that we have a lot of talent coming our way and a lot of talent that's going to help us scale and frankly is going to learn on our systems and stay in our systems, right? So we're big on partnerships and collaborations because we believe we're building a development ecosystem at the end of the day. And all these partnerships, from Fidelity to Goldman to a number more that we might have time to talk about, are kind of entrenching ourselves in the Fortune 500 as the quantum solution, right? You're spot on that Fidelity and Goldman Sachs have advanced quantum teams. They have, myriad PhDs on the payroll, and they've been investing in the space in quantum preparedness for years. Both have very respected teams. And the beauty of financial services, and I've sort of said this to people in the past that maybe haven't fully heard it, is it isn't like building a jet fighter where it's a 5, 10, 15-year product cycle. And you don't know if quantum computing really makes the aerodynamics better. With this one, we already have the algorithms for better options pricing, better portfolio management. All you need to do is run it. So like your product, is ready Monday, not in 10 years Monday, like Monday, right? I mean, IonQ has been running various algorithms that Fidelity and Goldman Sachs have been working on for years, just in the last few weeks, right? Like this stuff is happening in days and weeks, and the acceleration is really, picking up here in kind of an exponential fashion just in the past 6 months since we sort of announced we were going public. I'm very bullish here. I think financial services companies are bullish. I think IonQ is very bullish. I mean, Peter Chapman, our CEO, often talks about how this might be our biggest vertical, just because if you think about the competitive world of financial services, if you're running on a last year's quantum computer, you're not just a factor of 2 slower. You're a factor of 2 to the power of the difference in the qubits slower, right? So it's like Moore's law on steroids. And so there's a real chance, Pat, like your prop trading team will make no money if the other guy's system is like 1,000 times more powerful, right? You make no money, right? like you're running an inferior everything all the time, right? So it's really fascinating, right? If you think about it from that perspective, high frequency trading with quantum AI ML, the guys that invest in being first have this structural profit opportunity and a structural market share, and the guys and gals who don't, the opposite.
Yeah, this exhibits the exact same behavior in what I'll call the high performance computing market. And I'm not necessarily talking about national labs here. Right. I'm talking about drug makers, energy companies, and financial institutions where they can make order of magnitude more money by either shrinking the time to discovery, or when it comes to even nanoseconds on high frequency trading. I mean, the biggest buyer of the fastest networking equipment out there are high frequency traders, and they run everything in memory. So investing in the cost almost doesn't matter on what it is. And even if they have to crank out their own software, they're willing to do this because it's all about ROI. And so this is why I was glad to see these pop up first, because they really made the most sense to me, because quite frankly, you can make the most money there.
Most money soonest, because the product cycle, like I said, is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're trading tomorrow. So if the algorithm is better today, the beta is tomorrow, and it's full rip into prod on Monday, right? Like it's kind of the world's best test bed, right, for proving this stuff out. That's not to say, we have more partnerships and more shareholders, and there are really big, look, few people say that financial services will save humanity and the planet. Believe it or not, most people at IonQ are on a mission to try and do some pretty impressive stuff, like build better photovoltaics, better carbon capture. That's why Bill Gates is Breakthrough Energy Ventures an investor. It's why, Michael Dell's an investor, because the future of the cloud and computing probably is going to run through quantum computing. Everyone believes the future of the cloud is going to run on and through quantum computing, because look, it isn't that every single problem in the world benefits from quantum computing, right, but virtually every optimization problem does at some point.
Right.
And, as I always like to remind people, most valuable projects and problems, whether they're in the business world, the aerospace world, the pharmaceutical world, the material science world, the transportation, most of these actually are optimization problems. That's the funny thing about it, right? So, I'd say that, whilst not every problem will be benefited by quantum computing, 99.9% of the value in computing tends to come down to some version of optimization, right? And I think most people don't recognize, Patrick, beyond yourself, how fast is going to happen, right? I am constantly reminded of the great expression. It was Einstein or who said like, people always overestimate what you can do in 10 months and underestimate what you can do in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, cast your mind back. I was thinking about this, like cast your mind back to the Apple App Store, right? Today, it's an $80 billion revenue business. Can't live without it. It's so big, it's like getting regulated. 10 years ago, seriously, 10 years ago in 2010, 2011, it just started microtransactions. Okay, I mean, I know because I was there, as you might recall. And people were like, Steve Jobs was like, I don't know, making money doing this. Like before he passed away, he thought this would be a hobby. And it was just 10, 11, 12 years ago at most. So imagine where quantum computing will be. Forget 10 years from today. I actually think 10 quarters from today, right? 2024, 2025. People will be shocked at how much this has started to pervade a given, and look at EV cars. I mean, 10 years ago, it was Tesla.
Tesla was being written off as off to the boneyard.
You got it, right? And, and of course, it went from you're crazy to what's your EV strategy to everyone has an EV strategy, right?
Exactly.
And so this will happen here. I mean, this decade, not in the 2030s, in the 2020s, what is your quantum strategy will be asked by analysts of every Fortune 500 company. Guaranteed. The only question is what year does that happen?
I see the writing on the wall for sure. So it's not just financial institutions. In fact, this week, an announcement came out that GE is working with IonQ for risk management, another comparative type of problem. And you can just imagine all of the industries that could take advantage of massively accelerated risk management.
Yeah, and it's risk management on both a physical, digital, and almost personnel basis, right? People have to remember that whether you're a GE or a Honeywell, and by the way, Honeywell has a quantum initiative in-house. We don't think it's as far ahead as we are by quite some ways, but the reality is, both Honeywell and GE as large industrial powerhouses recognize the importance of quantum computing, not just for risk management, but also for the future of aerospace, the future of industrial engineering, the future of, how do you optimize a workforce that's in the hundreds of thousands that's trying to figure out a supply chain that is ever more global and ever more complex. And so once again, it's an optimization problem. You need stuff to happen in a certain order. You have lots of permutations. What is quantum computing good at? Cranking through permutations. That is kind of the fundamental tenet of being able to process, in a quantum way as you're doing stuff in an entangled state, so it happens in parallel, right?
Yeah, and I think you have a little experience at Honeywell as well, or at least a Honeywell offshoot.
Exactly.
Nice exposure to that. So I'm kind of taking us down the line here, right? Kind of bigger picture, kind of down to a funnel, and it was more than customer releases there. We also had a distribution pact with Accenture, which I view as one of the best, if not the best companies that takes raw technology with very complex solutions to solve problems for enterprises. This is what they're known for. This is what they're good for. And of course, there are competitors like IBM GBS and people like Infosys, folk like that. But Accenture is really good at that. What was this announcement about?
Yeah. So my partner at dMY Technology is Harry Yu. Harry was the CFO of Accenture at IPO way back in 2001. So he's watched this business, 25x their share price. Headcount at Accenture has gone from something like, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 to, I think it's 500,000 today, right? In the past 19, 20 years. They are a commercial machine, and they have identified quantum as one of their kind of platinum areas for investment and opportunity. And platinum really means they can make $1 billion a year out of it, right? So, I mean, of that order, right?
I think I like your description better.
Yeah. Well, listen, we agree with them, right? And what's so beautiful of this partnership is, if you think about IonQ, we have a lot of physicists, we have a lot of great minds. We're building a couple of quantum systems each generation. We're renting it out through the cloud, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. But Accenture has what we don't, right? They've got boots on the ground everyone across the world in every industry. trying to figure out how to ultimately build the APIs to commercialize this for every company of almost any scale, right? They're so big they can profitably work down almost into kind of the large SMEs, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't really ask for a better partner here, right? They have, goodness knows how many salespeople, goodness knows how many integration people, but the reach is just phenomenal, and we're honored to be working with them so closely, so early on, confident on both sides that this is that $1 billion a year revenue opportunity. We'll talk about the revenue split, on another call probably.
Yeah.
But the reality is, either way, even if we're wrong by a factor of 2, it's ginormous this decade. And Accenture's track record in hitting their numbers is also exceptional, right? So I think Ballmer used to be on the board there, and they once had a Windows partnership, and I think that became a $1 billion business, faster than anticipated earlier on in Accenture's history post IPO. But they've done this over and over and over, right, with new technologies. It's kind of a match made in heaven, to be honest, to accelerate a company which only has hundreds of employees into a business with hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, they're high quality solution provider, and I'll just leave it at that. So, hey, we're going down the funnel here. I wanted to flash up this slide, maybe talk about this this upgrade here. So upgrades are not something new with the dMY investment. And maybe you can take us through this slide here.
Yeah, look, we are deeply proud of this slide, and we're deeply proud not only of course, the companies for delivering this kind of operating momentum, but also for the companies in trusting us. We treat all of our deals like IPOs. Okay, so it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish.
Yeah.
and by finish, I mean not a month out, but a year and years out. And so I always like to say, I think Warren Buffett's obviously a deeply wise man. And when he talks about how the stock market in the long term is a weighing machine, this is what I think is the weighing machine. I think fundamental outperformance is the weight that gets measured, right? And so what you see on this page, Patrick, is our first 3 deals have all had tremendous outperformance relative to the numbers that were marketed for our PIPE transaction at announcement.
Yeah.
So look at Rush Street Interactive. We marketed $320 of revenue in 2021 last summer. And you can see our earnings call performances, consistent upgrades quarter after quarter. 2 quarters into this year, we're at 480. And that was only the August call. We're not done for the year, right? Genius, same thing. We marketed a PIPE last October at 190. 2 quarters into this year, we're pushing 260. But of course, IonQ, wins the prize. 6 months ago, we marketed a PIPE on a modest amount of revenue, 7 figures, and we said next year is 8 figures. Right. 6 months into the year, it's still only September. And Peter Chapman and Thomas Cromer, our CFO. By the way, Thomas has been the CFO of more than one public company before. Have been confident enough in their delivery that they've contracted with a minimum of 15 million of bookings rather than 5 this year, and that's basically next year's number, right? And right. I'm not saying they'll do more, but I will say that if you look at our track record and you look at obviously what it takes to run a successful public company, people like to beat and raise, and so we intend to beat and raise every chance we get, and this is really what it takes, honestly, Patrick, to make the ecosystem view SPACs as a high quality alternative to an S1 IPO or a direct listing. And if you look at the shareholder bases in our first 3 SPACs, anyone would be proud of them. They look the same as any other IPO alternative. We call ourselves the S4 IPO instead of the S1 of the direct listing, but it's achieving the same outcome for companies that are often a little earlier than would be possible for an S1 or direct listing.
Right. And let me flash this back up. I think your track record here says it all. What I do want to remind the listeners, and also as a CYA, that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Please don't take any of this as investment advice. Seek a professional for that. But with that said, there is an upcoming IonQ de-SPAC here that is pretty darn exciting, and I'd like to talk about that. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, a couple of things going on there. I wanna first say that whilst there's no investment advice on this program, there are a lot of great analysts that follow dMY and that follow IonQ in particular probably as a hobby. Men and women have been following the story since we announced it, and there is a very vibrant message board, social ecosystem, if you will, social network ecosystem of some pretty well thought out opinions. Actually, there's people that are looking at this technically, looking at this fundamentally. The right approach is always both, but the right approach for DMY is always fundamental, because the fundamental approach is what works regardless of what goes on in the macro environment, regardless of what goes on in COVID, shelter in place, inflation, you name it. Fundamental upgrades always outperform and make everybody look smart. But yes, I mean, look, we've had obviously a lot of enthusiasm coming into the stock in the last few weeks. We are heading into a shareholder vote on Tuesday the 28th. We expect the transaction to close the day after. It is a virtual certainty at this point, because all the resolutions have actually, more or less been passed by everyone who's voted to date. And this is going to be, I think, a market-making deal. There have been plenty of other SPAC sponsors that have seen a lot of redemptions. You're not going to see a lot of redemptions here. We had close to zero on our first 2 SPAC deals. This one, I think it is virtually certain it will be in the single digits if there are redemptions. And this compares to a marketplace where you're seeing sometimes 70, 90% in the current market. Even good teams are seeing 50. And I think we're going to be, more like 5 than 50. And that's a mixture of our stock price performance, but really it's the quality of our shareholder base, the fact that we focus on the fundamentals, the fact that we have an IPO investor base that was here for quantum computing, that was here because they like the long-term approach dMY takes. And most of all, because we brought in a pipe, you can see on this page, that's just chock-a-block full of the who's who of successful fundamental investors. We already had Google on the shareholder register and Amazon. We had Lockheed Martin and Samsung and Airbus. And we've added Fidelity, of course, as a financial lead, and they are big long-term thinkers, and of course, partners of the company now. But other great long-term thinkers like Silver Lake, Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energies, Michael Dell's family office, MSD Capital. Hyundai is a pipe investor. And there's been a number of other sovereign wealth participants as well that really help the company think about global reach, global distribution, and they think about how we're going to get into various marquee sectors. Now, one other thing that I will point out about our transaction structuring is this pipe is almost all strategic investors. There's very few in the way of traditional financial, and there's no short-term financial investors.
Right.
All of these people, because we were so oversubscribed, almost everybody in here, certainly who's not a pure financial investor, everybody else has a lockup. There's a 6 to 18 month lockup on most investors in the pipe. This is really unique. There's been a lot of people worried about, others recycling capital before the vote, after the vote. Obviously any recycling that was going to happen before the vote has happened, because we've got a bunch of new shareholders in here who've been buying the stock at $11 and above. But once we close, we have a pipe that's sticky, and a pipe that's here, and a pipe that's here to build that Nvidia of the future, that ARM of the future, that $50 to $500 billion market cap company. And so no one's in here for the 5%. They're in here for the 500%. And that means that this deal is very likely to trade well, because there won't be any downward recycling pressure in the short term. There's a lot of people that are here to see what this business can do as kind of the consolidator of the space, the 800-pound gorilla of the space. We're going to have $600 million or more of capital if you look at the pipe and the trust account. And we don't need but a fraction of that, by the way, to hit our organic, break-even plan. This is not, an EV battery story or EV car company. We need like $500 million to break even. Oops, we forgot. We needed that. We're like, we need 200 probably to break even. We're going to have 600, right? So a lot of strategic opportunities will abound with the surplus capital, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm an tech industry analyst, owner of a firm, not a investor analyst, investment analyst. But I got to tell you, you have to look at both sides of this. And what really surprised me the most about this is the companies that came in early and basically wrapped their arms around IonQ. Some of the biggest names in the industry.
Yeah.
Like
No.
a Fidelity, like a Goldman Sachs, like a GE, like University of Maryland. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I am really glad to see there's competition. Competition makes the world go around. I was a little worried at first that there wasn't going to be enough relevant competition to make the world go around. But in the end, there seemed to be a lot of folks coming to the forefront. So good luck on that vote. But wait a second, is this new news on what did you call it? The people who registered?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think in terms of the shareholder vote and whether or not there's going to be any redemptions, we're expecting everything to pass. We believe it already has, based on those who have voted. We believe redemptions are minuscule. Our redemption date actually deadline was a few hours ago. So the funny thing is, there could be some people that have mistakenly thought they wanted to redeem, and they're allowed to change that from redeem to not redeem. And obviously, the stock is 11:30 at the close, and the aftermarket it's 11:40 something. Why any rational economic actor would choose $10 over 11:40, I don't know. But some people, push the wrong button, or they think about it five weeks ago and don't look at the stock price. So I think at most we're going to have high single digits redemptions. Probably it's low single digits redemptions. It might be zero, depending on how people look at Monday and Tuesday as they look at the vote. But obviously, we're in an exceptionally strong position. This is a market-making quality transaction. It's the world's first quantum computing company. There will be some competition, I think, Patrick, but being the first public company means we have the capital, we have the public currency, we have the RSUs. We can compete, in that talent war. And it's not just the GEs and the Fidelities that matter. We think the fact that Google, Amazon, Microsoft wrapped their arms around this company early, and they're the guys that have the internal quantum departments. They all do. And they still chose IonQ. We're the only company in the world with those 3 cloud partnerships. That, to me, is one of the greatest pieces of technical validation and diligence you could ask for in the public markets, right?
Yeah, I'll admit it made a big impression on me. I very closely cover the IaaS market with all 3 of those players, and have special relationships in different way with every one of those companies. So, and you don't normally see any of those companies. They typically they want it for themselves, and companies allow it. But anyways, I won't go down that hole. But hey, we are at time. Niccolo, is there anything I didn't ask you that you think is important, or any last words for our viewers?
I mean, look, I get a lot of feedback over social media, email, etc. I appreciate all of it. I want everybody who's a retail investor, personal investor. I appreciate the sophistication of the analysis that's gone into this. I think you guys are making smart decisions, right decisions. You're correct. dMY Technology cares about our track record, and we try and get better every deal. One question I get a lot that I just want to answer once and for all. If you buy DMYI, it automatically turns into IonQ. There is nothing magical that happens. You don't have to wait to buy it. If you buy the DMYI warrants, if you buy the DMYI units, or you buy the underlying stock, all of it automatically changes. It's the same trading ticker for the NYSE. We're just changing the name of it from a public-facing perspective. So you don't need to wait. You can dive in now if you want. Get it before it takes off further, as they say, because I think this is an investment for your grandchildren. That's really how I look at quantum computing. IonQ is like, this is one where you put in your portfolio, you never sell it, because it's hard to believe this will not grow irrevocably. At minimum, Pat, this has huge strategic value as a company for a Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Accenture, GE. I mean, like, all these businesses are going to think this company is invaluable, right? And the future of what they're doing, and they might want to make it the proprietary future of what they're doing, right? So it'll always have a lot of strategic premium to it at every size, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a good time. It's 8:00 at night here in Austin, and we're still cranking it out here. I appreciate the passion, and it's been really great to get to know you this year. Actually, we met a couple of years ago, but seeing each other a little bit more over this year. And good luck with the big vote. I'm pretty sure I know how it's going to end up. So probably not a whole lot of nail biting out there, but
no, it's all going to go great. The question is whether it's going to go great, fabulous, or truly amazing and spectacular.
I love it. This is
days.
Pat Moorhead with more insights and strategies, signing off with Niccolo de Masi from DMY Technology. Thanks and have a great night. Have a great weekend.